7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hey everybody, this is Danny Lambert with Plush Republic. Today we'll be going through a really important topic, which is what is SQL and how to write a very basic SQL query. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and its primary use is to be able to interact with databases and gather insights from structured data. So this runs from everything from database administrators and analysts to people that are more on the marketing side, like technical marketers like myself. It is becoming a very critical skill set for almost anybody that leverages big data or is in marketing or sales even, to be able to get access to data that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have and glean insights from it. So I'll be walking you through how to write some pretty basic queries today and show you the power that this presents. So on my back screen right here, you'll see I have a tool called DB Visualizer open. This is just a SQL interface. So alternatives to this are Valentina Studio, SQL Pro, DB Beaver, and then even like some of the data warehouses like Snowflake will have their own SQL interface, just like this one I have here. The prerequisites to this course is that you already have databases set up somewhere, whether it's in Google Cloud or whether it's in AWS. You need to have some tables that you want to interface with that you would get from your database administrators. You get access to these tables from your database administrators, and then you use the SQL interface of your choice. Mine in this case is DB Visualizer to interact with those. So in this case, I'm interacting with this Rev Marketing database, which is a bunch of dummy data. When I'm in this Rev Marketing database, you'll notice I have some tables. So this is exactly like any product that you would use. In a product, you typically have users and orders and all sorts of maybe team members, all sorts of tables that contain data, structured data. That's why it's SQL. Structured data that you want to try to join together and gather insights from. So in this case, I have an accounts table and a ZoomInfo data table. One is just like random accounts, and this one contains information about those accounts. So I'll start with like a very basic command that you'll use a lot, which is called describe. And I would just type describe and accounts. And then I'll click run, and it will tell me what is in that accounts table. So I have ID, domain, and account name. If I run that same query for ZoomInfo data, you'll see I have a lot more information. I have ID, domain, account ID, Zoom ID, industry, sub-industry, so much more data. So if I don't know how to structure a query, I would only be able to access data in either one of these tables, and realistically the value is joining them together, right? I know these are hypothetically my accounts. I want to know more information about them, maybe what countries they're in or what industries they are in. So first thing I will do is show you the starting command for any SQL query. So this you'll use to start off almost any type of SQL queries, definitely all basic queries. There's like more professional or advanced syntax that we might go into in later videos, but you always start with select. And if you do the asterisk, this means all in SQL. So this will select all rows from a table. And then you need to tell it where you want to select that information from. So you just write from and the table. So this is just saying select all columns and all rows from the accounts table over here. And as you saw before, that had 3 columns: ID, domain, and account name. I can then do the same thing for the ZoomInfo. Select all from ZoomInfo data, and then I can run that. This might take a little bit longer. I know this has a lot of rows in it, but this should return many more rows, all the same columns and rows that I showed in that second describe, right? Industry, headcount, all sorts of information like that. So that's your first most basic SQL query, is if you want to select all from a table. I can also tell it to return specific rows. So if I just want to select domain, now this will only return one column, that named column. Another common addition that you'd have in your basic SQL syntax is a where clause. So I'm saying select domain from ZoomInfo data, and now I can say where domain equals Nike.com. And that filters it just down to that one domain. So those are some like very basic but very important parts of SQL. Select where you're selecting from, and where is to show you to start filtering. Where is essentially a filter criteria. So I'll go back here and I'll say select all from ZoomInfo data where domain equals Nike. So I'm going to quickly change this same query to look at the accounts table. Notice something important here. This has an ID of 3, and then if I go back to ZoomInfo data table with this same filter, this has an ID here of 6564, but it has an account ID of 3. This introduces a very important concept in SQL, which is joins. So to join tables together, they have to have a similar trait. So usually every table will have its unique ID. So in accounts, the Nike ID was 3. In the ZoomInfo data table, Nike's record, its unique ID is 65,064, but it still has this matching account ID with the accounts table. And this is the trait that I will need to join the two together. In SQL, they call this joins, and I'll pull up a nice graph of this right now. These are the types of joins that you can do. So an inner join, if you're taking two tables, will say, I want to look at only the information that both of these tables share. So if there's 50 records in the left table and there's 100 records in the right table and both of them share 20 IDs, it would only return 20 records or 20 rows. A full join would be the opposite of that. It would return all of the rows on both sides of the join from the first table and the second table. A left join would say match on the left table, and then a right join would match on the right side. So you're selecting which table it's joining off of and which one it will return. So I will show you an inner join here in action. So what I want to do now is I'll start with selecting all from the accounts table, and I'll remove my where clause. What if I want all of this ZoomInfo data, but only for the accounts that are in this table? That is where I would say select all from accounts, and I would say inner join ZoomInfo data I'll just give this a name as CI data on ID And now you'll notice I've pulled in all of those other rows here. It's starting from the base of accounts that I just showed you, but it's pulling in all the additional information about them. So let me explain what's going on in this query that I just added here. So I'm selecting everything from accounts, and then I'm saying do an inner join, right? Pull all the information that is in both tables from accounts matching with ZoomInfo data. So I'm saying inner join the ZoomInfo data as ZI data. This is renaming this so it's a little bit shorter. And it's saying on ZI data account ID equals accounts.id. So it's saying take the account ID that we had in the original table and then merge it with the accounts ID that we had from the Zoom info data table. So this is an extremely powerful query because now I can use all of the information about those. And you can start to then filter this down and add additional criteria on. So say I just want to return the rows where industry equals consumer services. And now I just have all of the accounts that have consumer services industry. What if I wanted to get a count of all of the accounts that were in here? I could say select count of ID. Oops, sorry. I had to say accounts ID, and that's telling me that I have 4,199 accounts where industry is equal to consumer services. So this is getting a little bit more into advanced syntax using account method here to aggregate this information. But hopefully this is a helpful beginner's example of what SQL is and how you can start to write queries to pull various different tables together, aggregate insights about the data that is in those tables. And in future videos, I'll start to go into some more complex aggregations, some temporary tables, a lot more advanced topics in SQL depending on the engagement. So if you really like this content, please leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments section that you find this valuable, and I will create more SQL related content in the future. Thank you.